Standard Bank Corporate Art Collection showcased its first ever exhibition in 2021 on Thursday evening, titled Photographs in Our Mother Tongue. This exhibition features images from their art collection by major South African artists working in the photographic medium between 2003 and 2017. This is curated by Dr Same Mdluli, and she joins us now via Zoom to share more. Dr Mdluli, a very good morning to you. It's good to have you back on Morning Live. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
Now, first of all, just share more on the photographic exhibition you currently have on.
Yeah. So the exhibition really came about, obviously, because of the impact of COVID and having to close the gallery, which has been closed for about a year now. We closed last year in March, just before the first hard lockdown that we had in South Africa. And in things opening up slowly this year, we had to kind of plan and think about what would make sense and be the most logistically kind of easier exhibition to put together for this year, bearing in mind that we are still in lockdown, but also because we are having to prescribe to what the bank kind of institutes in terms of COVID regulations. So we had to find a plan that worked with these conditions in a very kind of practical manner. And the most practical was really to source material from our own corporate art collection, which sits in the offices of the Standard Bank offices. And at the moment, because it's vacant, because everybody's working at home, it made it a lot easier logistically to get these artworks, put them together into an exhibition, and then kind of give it a virtual experience for our viewers.
Why the theme Photographs in Our Mother Tongue? What's in that title?
Yeah. So it really comes from the fact that photography is a medium, although it's a very complex medium, it is also the most accessible. And given that our time during, social distancing, photographs were, I think, a big part of how people connected. Photos and, of course, videos. Now that technology and phones can do these amazing things. But essentially, it boils down to the fact that photographs are these very accessible, it's a very accessible medium. And now that everybody has a phone and, shares their selfies, we wanted to take a look at what is in the collection in terms of photography. And so the title of Photographs in Our Mother Tongue really relates to the fact that it is an accessible medium, one that if you look, at how it communicates, you can almost say that it is speaking to us in our mother tongue. Yeah.
Indeed. Now, the work exhibited dates back to 2003, Dr. Mdluli. I think that's about 18 years ago. So what's the significance of those photos that you selected and the value that it holds?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is interesting about managing and looking after a collection is that you kind of, over time, you start to see the patterns of what was being collected and when and why. And so with photography, it's quite evident when I looked at, after kind of selecting these photographs, it was kind of evident to see that a lot of them were shot or taken by the photographers in this period. And so it also tells you something about what was happening, I think, in that moment of, the early 2000s. Photography was becoming very, very prominent as a medium, almost, I think, in the same way that it was starting to be it became prominent in the early 1990s, 1994, primarily because, of course, during that time, it was documenting the transition into a new democracy. With the 2000, however, I think it's more about how these underlying themes of how, a lot of photographers and society in South Africa in general were starting to depict things that spoke about identity politics, representation, feminism, questions around the land, all of these kind of social commentaries that had to do with, a transforming society.
Now, Dr Same Mdluli, the editor for City Life Arts, is asking the question, But, well, in as much as we know how it feels to speak in our mother tongue, but does this feeling translate into sight? I mean, how do we look at the world? Do we look at the world as black, brown or white people? So I think these are some of the pertinent questions that need to be addressed. So are you of the view, or do you get a sense that this photographic exhibition tackles those questions?
In a big way, I think. Primarily, I think also because of how photography itself as a medium has evolved, right? You have some artists, that have been working in black and white precisely because of the nuances that it offers, in giving meaning to images. A veteran photographer like David Goblat, for example, started working in photography as a photojournalist, and during that time he was primarily using only black and white, because it offered a kind of aesthetic, I think, that spoke about how he was trying to depict society at the time. And then post 1994, he starts experimenting with color photography, which starts to do something else in terms of a language that he's trying to create in making you see, for example, that there's been this transition of, pre-1994, where the world was thought of as very black and white. And then in post-1995, there's this kind of color transition that happens, and you start to see a lot more what the world is offering. To speak metaphorically about, I think, how things are starting to open up, and people's eyes almost are being opened by what they're seeing in the world. Yeah. So definitely, because photography is a language on its own.
Okay. And how long did it take you to find the fitting photographs to complement the theme? And how does each photograph contribute to this exhibition and fits in the theme, Dr. Mdluli?
Yeah. So last year, because of the having to work from home, luckily I have an inventory of what is in the collection. And so, once you have all the artworks, what you do is then you start to do a selection, and then look at each works individually and see what each artist, for example, was trying to communicate in those photographs. And so from there, I started picking up sort of, reoccurring themes, so to speak. And so, some of the photographs are by, what as I mentioned earlier, is considered photojournalism or documentary, and others are more leaning towards a fine art kind of photography, which is a bit more experimental, where photographers are kind of using the medium really as a way of manipulating images to give it another meaning. So individually, that's how each artist kind of fits in, that each comes with their own kind of artistic language, but it all gels together because it's under the rubric of photography, and using it as the kind of primary medium that tells the story.
Okay, Dr. Same Mdluli, great chatting to you, and we do thank you for your time. Just a quick one, are you welcoming guests at this exhibition this year, or is the exhibition still done virtually?
It's still, unfortunately, still done virtually.
Okay.
I really wish that at some point we are able to open up very soon. But as I said again, it all depends on what the bank prescribes for us, because we are, after all, a gallery that's owned by a bank. We
certainly miss the vibe and the interaction with the other fellow artists. Yeah. Great chatting to you, Dr. Mdluli. Do have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
All right. That was Dr. Same Mdluli sharing with us more details on the photographs in our mother tongue exhibition, which features images from their art collection by major South African artists. This is Morning Live on SABC News. Thank you so much for joining us.